Nintendo released a 10-minute-long gameplay demonstration of Tears of the Kingdom early in the morning, and I wanted to talk about all the new things they confirmed, along with a bunch of small predictions. Before even getting into any new abilities, we have some new info right here. Notice the minimap. It looks a bit different from the old one. The biggest new feature seems to be the addition of visible coordinates. On the top left of the screen, we see our quick select buttons for weapons, shields, and materials. They've been mapped up onto the D-pad for reasons we'll see later in the trailer. This does mean that this game's abilities have been mapped to a different button, specifically the L button. Look at how Link has 4 hearts already. This implies this gameplay demonstration takes place after Tears of the Kingdom's tutorial equivalent to the Great Plateau. That's also probably why Link is wearing this outfit. Now in this shot we can see a few things. On the right is one of those towers we've seen in other trailers. Maybe that's where we have to go to get our map now. On the mountain we can see this little rock with an energy tornado. We've seen these in other trailers too, both with and without the magic. Anuma says there are multiple ways to get to the Skylands, so maybe this is one of them? Alternatively, it could lead to this game's equivalent of a Sheikah Shrine. On the left we see smoke coming from the mouth of a horse tent on a stable, and to be honest I can't remember if that was a thing in the last game. I don't think it was? Anyway, notice how the game waits for you to get close to a skyline for the first time before it drops a rock, so you can see it fall and know where it is. It's smart, so the game doesn't force the player to look around the entire area looking for a rock that's already been dropped to get up to a skyland. Here we see our first ability, Recall. Up here is a symbol which I think might be the kanji for rewind, but that's definitely not confirmed. Also, see that when Link activates the ability, a reticle pops up. The player can now move a reticle for precise non-motion controlled aiming while not moving Link. Interesting. I wonder if that's optional. Recall as an ability is cool, since we can see it's going to be used for many different things, not just getting up to the Skylands. Look at this. When Link gets up to the Skyland, the map is all gray, but after the cut, the map is updated. Is it possible we'll have to do some kind of shrine or trial or puzzle on a Skyland to get to that map instead of doing the towers on the surface? Here we have more evidence of customizable gliders. Also of note, it doesn't seem that Link has those juice vials yet that we've seen in other trailers. Our first new enemy, a construct. But as we'll see soon, constructs are not all hostile. This type is because it's a soldier construct, as told to us by its item drop. Kinda freaky looking, it sort of reminds me of a Beamos. I like that this enemy also gets mad when you take its weapon, like what goblins do. When you kill this enemy, it drops that horn on the top of its head that looks like a blade, which is interesting considering the fact that a bunch of other enemies now have weapon-like horns. We'll get to that later though. The enemy also drops the Zonai charge, which seems to imply these things are built by the Zonai who also powered them with this energy. So, the Bell of the Ball, the Fuse ability. This is so cool, it's so creative and innovative, and I can barely imagine all the ways players are going to use it. What's really interesting about this ability is this though. Look at the icon. The sword is chipped and battered, and we know that fusing 2 weapons together doesn't only increase its damage output and change its hitbox, but also increases its durability. I have a feeling we will be able to fuse weapons we like with certain materials or duplicates of that weapon to repair it without changing its appearance. Effectively fixing breakable weapons is a problematic concept, at least for me. Maybe that's what all these weapon-like monster horns will do. This era fusion sequence definitely proves Ratatoska right about this homing arrow being attached to a Keith's eyeball as shown in a previous trailer. I'll link his channel in the description, he's cool. Probably can craft makeshift elemental arrows now, but it does make me wonder what the purpose of buying actual elemental arrows will be since our crafted ones don't seem to be any weaker. Then we see Link fuse a mushroom to a shield. This is definitely the same thing as the flamethrower shield from one of the earlier trailers. I like how we can fuse non-weapons to weapons for different effects, like the single-use smoke screen is really cool. Link finds a log and has the option to either fuse it to his shield or his sword. He chooses the latter and the log seems to shrink considerably. So it seems like no matter how big or what shape an item you're fusing is, it's going to maintain the original weapon's type, so the log shrunk to keep the weapon as a one-handed sword. Link finds a small lake, and Anuma says he can't cross it himself. This could be nothing, but it might imply something interesting. Notice how true the abilities we've seen so far seem like variations of Sheikah runes. Recall is yellow and time-themed, like Stasis. The upcoming ability allows us to control items telekinetically and seems to play like Magnesis. The fact that Link needs to craft to get over a big lake tells me we probably won't be getting a Cryonis equivalent. Our next ability is called Ultra Hand. It does confuse me as to why Ultra Hand is separate from Fuse, because Ultra Hand just seems to fuse objects together, while Fuse can combine weapons with weapons, weapons with materials, and weapons with objects. Although it's an awesome ability, being able to create makeshift vehicles with different objects, changing their orientation for unique shapes to get across obstacles, is really cool. Also, notice that the ability icon is the one from merchandise. It's really ominous looking. The fact that it's this ability that's in the middle of the rune circle thing makes me think it's important in some way. Maybe Ganondorf was actually fused / ultra-handed in this seal. This mechanic in a trailer once before, but yeah, we seem to be able to turn on super precise non-motion control when we move objects, which will make gyro puzzles a lot less annoying. We can turn on and off the mechanical functions of a makeshift vehicle by smacking it. It's pretty cool. Here we see our first friendly construct. At least it seems friendly. It's called a ranger construct. It looks like it's just heading to the fauna on the Skyland. The fact that Ultra Hand can just grab any object and move it around is super interesting to me. Magnesis is obviously just for metal objects, but you can just gravity gun whatever you want with this ability. Before we talk about the phasing ability, look at the mini-map again. Look at how it tells you the elevation of certain places on the map, compared to Breath of the Wild where it just surrounds mountains with lines to show that it's on an incline. I can't tell if I like it or not. The Ascend ability is pretty cool. I like how if the distance to the surface is sizable, we can see Link go through this crazy void space. I do have some concerns though. I feel like it might undermine some climbing challenges the same way Revali's Gale did. Also, if there's no green arm juice meter that will limit how far you can phase before reaching your mana cap, then I'm worried that players can just use it as a get out of jail free card when running into trouble while underground. Buffalo enemies can also have fused weapons. This is probably something only constructs and other enemies like it can do though. As Link is falling, we can see that the waterfalls from Skyland kind of evaporate before they get anywhere close to the surface. This tells us we won't be able to use anything like the Zora armor to get up to any of them. To close up, here is something really interesting to me. When Link is falling, he cannot use his Ascend ability. When he lands in the water and goes a couple of feet below the surface, he can. But then when he resurfaces, he can't anymore. The absolutely only reason Link would be able to use his Ascend while barely submerged underwater, but not be able to once he is resurfaced, is if he can go deeper underwater. I am telling you, Tears of the Kingdom will absolutely have underwater exploration. Thank you for watching this short little video. Comment if you found anything I missed, and let me know if you agree with my predictions. Bye!